My name is Wayne Roxon. I am a 38-year-old tobacco planter, and I live in the Commonwealth of Virginia on my plantation, the Acropolis, on the Northern Neck. I earn plenty of money, own 30 slaves, and farm tobacco on 80 acres of land. I believe that slavery should not be abolished. Without slavery, the country's crops will die, our economy will collapse, and the United States, our new country, will not last. Economics, religion, history, social good, humanitarianism, and the law support my belief in the legitimacy of slavery. Because property is inherited through males and our nation's wealth is led by men, only free white property-holding men should vote. Our country relies on export duty, taxes, to fund the government and pay our national debt. Planters like myself mostly depend on slave labor to plant, tend, harvest, and load tobacco, cotton, and lumber for export to Europe. The foundation of our economy is based on slave labor. Slavery has existed throughout history and is a natural state of mankind. There is a reason why the Northern Neck is known as the Athens of the New World. George Washington, the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, was from the Northern Neck and owns hundreds of slaves. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, owns hundreds of slaves. James Madison, a delegate at the Congress of the Confederation, owns more than 100 slaves. The ancient Greeks had slaves, the Roman Empire had slaves, and the English Empire has slavery. Without slaves, I would be doomed. My father owned slaves, and my grandfather owned slaves. Slaves are property, and the law of Virginia defends the right to own property. Our legal tradition, descended from English common law, establishes the right to own and defend property. The law of the Commonwealth of Virginia defines who is a slave and gives slave masters property rights over them. Most slaves are from Africa and grew up without school and no education. They are uncivilized and don't know how the economy works. Africans cannot fend for themselves. Slave masters like myself take care of hurt slaves, give them a place to live, feed them, and give them work. The patriarch Abraham, the founder of Judaism, owned slaves. Slavery existed in the time of Jesus, and nowhere in the Bible does it say owning slaves was wrong nor a sin. The 10th commandment says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant." In the New Testament, Paul returned a runaway slave, Philemon, to his master. Jesus never spoke out against it. Slavery is good for society because without it, people would lose their jobs and the United States would not be able to pay back its debt, which would lead to wars. People would start fighting and killing each other. It would be every man for himself because there would be no leaders. Amendment 1. Africans are inferior to white men and will always be. Slavery should not ever be abolished, and Africans should never be able to vote. They are uncivilized and don't know how the economy works. Fired Africans cannot fend for themselves. Slave masters like myself take care of hurt slaves, give them a place to live, feed them, and give them work. Amendment 2. People who do not own land should never be able to vote. They do not own land and do not participate in paying taxes. The thought of them being able to vote for laws terrifies me. They will vote for senseless laws and try to make the poor and the rich equal. Does this mean I will lose my money? I would never let that happen. My family worked hard to get me where I am today. The poor do not know how to work or how the economy works. Why would anybody think it is a good idea for them to have say in what laws are passed? Property is inherited by men, and our country is led by men. Women should stay home with their children and work in their houses. They do not have time to vote. Most women do not go to school and don't know anything about business or why certain laws should be passed. Men should stick to business and running this country. Women should stick to taking care of their kids and cleaning. Women should not inherit property. The property should be passed on to the closest male relative.